Good evening and welcome to this, yet another Blue Mondays. Blue Mondays is where we take a look at national, state, and local news through a progressive perspective. Tonight's show, we have a treat for you. We sent our crack team of reporters out on the road with candidate Mike Stagg as he tours the district campaigning to unseat Congressman Charles Bustani. Mike has done an incredible job of getting out and talking to a great many different people, and we wanted to bring you just a few of those shots. So tonight's show, we will be taking you on the road and talking with not only Mike Stagg, but also the individuals who are supporting him and who have turned up to some of his events. However, first up tonight, Lafayette made some national news. This past week on PBS's Bill Moyers, Moyers on America, that is, The Net at Risk, we were featured inside of a documentary. We wanted to bring you a few of those clips here tonight to show you how they reported on us, and you can also visit their website at pbs.org and get more information on this incredible mini documentary that was put together and featured us right here in Lafayette. So here are a few of the clips from the Moyers on America. Here you go.
When we began our reporting, my colleagues Peter Bull and Rick Carr wanted to call this story David versus Goliath. They were struck by the fact that after the phone companies failed to build the information superhighway they had promised, several towns and cities across the country took matters into their own hands and decided to build their own fiber optic networks. That has landed almost every one of them in a David versus Goliath battle, as phone and cable giants push back, determined to outlaw what they call unfair competition from municipalities. For our case study, Peter and Rick traveled to Lafayette, Louisiana, the heart of Cajun country.
We have an out-migration problem with our young people from Louisiana, and I felt it was time for politicians to quit talking and do something.
Something like building every home and business in town its own fiber optic connection to the information superhighway.
We see telecommunications in the way of internet, in the way of fiber connectivity, as something that should be available to everyone.
Just like water, sewer, electricity, telephone. I mean, it all falls into that same lump.
I think this is a tremendous opportunity for small business and to attract business here.
Lafayette's phone company, Bell South, and its cable company, Cox Communications, told residents that they'd have to wait a decade or longer for better internet connections, like the ones they take for granted in Tokyo.
Up until recently, the majority of the parish only had one-way communication on their cable, so they could download information. However, but to be able to send any information, they had to be able to connect through a phone modem.
If we didn't do it, this community would not get it for 20 or 30 years. Who knows? And what's your name?
Joey Durrell is the city parish president of Lafayette. He calls himself a progressive Republican who sees no reason why local government shouldn't provide services that the private sector won't.
You know, there are things that are going to be available 3 or 4 or 5 years from now that nobody has even thought about yet. And that's going to happen. And Lafayette will be uniquely positioned to take advantage of that, unlike most of the country.
So what the city decided to do was build its own fiber network through its municipal power and water company, Lafayette Utility Systems, or LUS. Terry Huval is the utilities director. A lot of people think of the internet as being sort of the triumph of the marketplace, the triumph of entrepreneurship. Why would a public utility need to get involved with the internet?
The community wanted to have competitive options for telephone and mainly cable television service. Cable television service drove us to look at this because people were so dissatisfied with the cable TV company continually going up on their rates.
When the city-owned utility started to build its own small fiber network, looping around town to link up its generators, substations, and offices, Huval had an aha moment.
That's what created the vision of saying we can do something special for our community, for the people that own this utility system.
He realized that LUS could extend the network to every home and business in town and provide better internet service at a lower price if the city could raise $125 million by selling bonds.
We said, guys, come on.
Some residents launched a grassroots campaign to support the community fiber plan. They called themselves Lafayette Coming Together, and they got together at a local restaurant to tell us about their unusual coalition.
and I'll repeat this till the day I die, can't nobody else compete against corporate America but government. And when I saw the government willing to take a stand in regards to helping the people of this community, I said, I'm getting on board this train.
We have a mix in this room of Democrats and Republicans. I'm definitely on the conservative side. This is not a traditional place for conservatives or Republicans to be.
Last time we were here, somebody made an analogy to roads and said, you know, we expect that the government is going to build roads because that's essential to commerce, and this is akin to that.
That's another reason I think conservatives have been able to come over to support this effort. It's infrastructure, and that's one of the things that we look to our government to provide.
The big thing for us is realizing that the future of the world in communications is going to be big pipes, big bandwidth, big capacity, and that we were going to be left behind just like we would have been left behind with candles in 1896.
It was in 1896 that Lafayette residents set a precedent for today's fight over fiber. The city had been passed over by private companies selling a cutting-edge energy source, electricity.
They had much bigger cities they could go to, like Baton Rouge and New Orleans at the time, and so they passed us by. Well, our community decided that we wanted electricity. So that's when LUS, the Lafayette Utility Systems, was formed. And so we had a good message. If we don't do it, we don't get it.
Until the city of Lafayette decided to do it, Bell South and Cox were in no hurry to improve internet service. But as soon as there was a threat of some competition from the city, they jumped into action at the state capitol.
As soon as we started talking fiber, as soon as we started laying out in a public way that we were thinking about doing this, telephone companies started their lobby. Cable television companies started their lobbies.
Cox and Bell South had plenty of clout in Baton Rouge, and they used it to try to kill Lafayette's fiber plan. They argued that it represented unfair competition. They wouldn't speak to us. One of the criticisms that opponents of municipal networks make is that LUS doesn't pay taxes, so you have an unfair competitive advantage over for-profit companies.
Pure bunk. Pure bunk. And they know it. Currently, we're paying somewhere over 10% of our gross revenues in lieu of taxes. That's greater. That's about $17 million. That is greater than by tenfold what the telecommunications companies are paying in Lafayette. So we're actually paying a higher burden.
Vote yes for fiber.
I'm voting yes for fiber.
Vote yes.
Vote yes for fiber.
Vote yes. Votez oui pour fiber.
The city and the communications giants agreed to put it to a vote. Lafayette residents would decide whether the city could issue $125 million in bonds to pay for the fiber network. Without the deep pockets of the phone and cable giants, Lafayette coming together put together an inexpensive and inventive campaign. It included something called the Fiber Film Festival, short, homemade videos distributed over the internet.
So it boils down to this. This good-looking fast machine right here, which you don't really want, or this really nice, fits you like an old shoe type thing right here. Hey, it's a deal of the century to me. What do you think, Lafayette?
Sorry, Sam. Lafayette's not interested.
It was what's known as a viral internet campaign. Not a virus that infects a computer, but something that's funny and compelling that people spread from computer to computer.
Wake up. Smell the coffee. You're getting snowballed. Cox and Bell South are spreading disinformation in an effort to rob you of your opportunity to have a superior high-speed fiber optic television, internet, and phone connection direct to your home and your chance to pay 20% less. We can rise above that, Lafayette. On July 16th, you can vote yes for LUS fiber to the home. Vote yes for the future. Show us some teeth.
Vote yes for fiber for Lafayette.
Vote yes, July 16th for fiber.
People all over the world were looking at this Fiber Film Festival, just laughing about this and just thrilled with it. And I'd get emails from people saying, don't let them stop you, don't let them slow you down.
Take a pause and savor this moment. You have been part of making history.
On Election Day, the people of Lafayette enthusiastically agreed to build their own fiber network. 62% voted to let the city borrow the money and start construction.
And the reason we got the vote, I said often during the campaign, was price and pride. People people are going to save money, and people are proud in this community, and they're proud of being a progressive community. And so I think that's what won the vote for us.
The phone company wasn't about to roll over, though. BellSouth filed suit against the plan, once again claiming unfair competition. The court battle has delayed construction by more than a year and cost the city more than $125,000 in legal fees.
What they've been effective at in the past to create fear is to stretch out the time it takes for any fiber optics to get actually online, so that they can say, well, look, they're not meeting their expectations. Their business model has failed.
Despite the victory at the polls, the legal battle drags on. The city of Lafayette has had to ask Louisiana's highest court for permission to finally connect residents to the fiber optic fast lane.
As I told my community, to them, we're nothing but a chocolate chip in their jar of chocolate chip cookies, you know. But the last thing they wanted to see was a community the size of Lafayette held up as a success.
A few other communities across the country have also taken on the phone and cable companies, and like Lafayette, succeeded in building municipal networks. But it's an itch the two industries are trying to keep from spreading. They spend around $40 million a year on lobbying in state capitals, and so far they have convinced legislatures in 14 states to make it more difficult or impossible for communities to build their own networks. We're talking here of a powerful duopoly, less David versus Goliath than one giant against another. That's because in more than 90% of American homes, phone and cable companies are the only two potential sources of internet service. The cable company's only competition is the phone company, and vice versa. To slice off business from their cable rival, the phone companies now say they're going to build a new network of internet service that will be even better than the one they promised in the 90s but never produced. Once again, though, they want something in return. They want control, not just over the copper wires and fiber optic cables, but control over the internet itself.
And welcome back. That was the featured clips inside of Moyers on America, which appeared on PBS this past week. To get more information, log on over to pbs.org. There you'll be able to find out a lot more information on the show, as well as get your own copy of it on DVD. Now we're going to continue our show, and we're going to go on the road with candidate Mike Stagg as he travels the 7th Congressional District. Mike has had a bunch of different meetings and forums all throughout the district, and one of them we caught up with him at the Clifton Chenier Center this past week as he screened the film Iraq for Sale. A lot of great information on there that we think the public needs to know about. So here is our traveling reporter, Richard Warren, as he interviews candidate Mike Stagg and also brings you some clips from the movie Iraq for Sale. Here you go.
And I had a very strong reaction to the film. First of all, my stepson was in the first Gulf War, and the film opens with a mother and a wife who each lost one her son and one her husband. The company just going for profit. They felt they weren't adequately protected. The trucks weren't properly armored, and they went down a road that the Army had been told, and it had been broadcast that that road was code red or whatever. It was a road that the Army wasn't letting anyone go down, but the company sent that truck down anyway, and the trucks were blown up, and it opened that way, and I could relate to it in a very, very strong way.
Well, I had already read articles that said if you want to understand what's going on in Iraq, follow the money. And I think this showed it really graphically. I had already heard that the troops were saw that the contractors there were living high on the hog, where the troops would get much less money and were being put in far more danger than the contractors who were there. So that was demoralizing for our troops. Also, to have so much money being splashed around by the contractors when there wasn't money for armor and things that could really protect our troops, I thought was just awful.
they went on from there about the inadequacies of the troops, and they had a number of military people speaking, and I felt that the military's responsibility is being robbed by the private corporations. The Army's responsibility is taken away. Even the prison guarding at Abu Ghraib, some of that is private. And the president is asked in the film what would be the channel of reprimanding or how would it be addressed if these people were inappropriate, and he didn't have a response, and he smiled, of course, and laughed. And it's horrifying.
Well, you ought to be. It's sort of like the war money is this giant feeding trough. It's corporate welfare, and you've got them just slurping up our tax dollars. And for what? And, you know, again, I guess the biggest eye-opener for me on the movie was that most of the people who go over there as contractors didn't really know what they were getting into, that really the big money is being made up the higher echelons. The ones who go over there usually, you know, look, wow, this is great money, but they didn't realize, you know, quite the dangers that they were getting themselves into. And also, oftentimes they were doing things just to be able to bill money. They had nothing to do with security, had nothing to do with helping either Americans or Iraqis. It was just, you know, driving empty trucks in order to be able to put it on the bill. And just horrendous things going on there, which, you know, as a taxpayer, I hate the waste of the money and I hate the waste of the lives. And for what? Does this make us any more secure? No, it makes us far less secure.
There's no system in place for the acts. And these are soldiers telling the stories, and parents telling the stories, and military commanders telling the stories, and it just rolling out one after another. It's just shocking. Well, it's not what you see on TV. It's not what you read in the newspaper, and it's so pervasive. It's on such a large scale, and there's scenes in Congress of men trying to bring up bills for it to be addressed, and it's being they're being failed one after the other, one after the other. It's been brought to Congress's attention. They just can't get enough votes for it to be addressed. It's been brought to the floor. It is not a shocking or a film of blood or gore or anything like that. It's not. It's a facts film that people need to see.
Well, I think that it would be an eye-opener for a lot of people that you sort of see a very specified viewpoint of the war, you know, on the news, and it doesn't really show you what's going on, where our money is being spent or misspent.
Hello, Acadiana, and welcome to Meet the Democrats. I'm Richard Warren, and today I'm here with Mr. Mike Stagg, and we're at a screening of a brand new release, a movie released by Brave New Film called Iraq for Sale. And I'm going to be asking the candidate for the United States Congress, House Seat 7th District. He's in competition with Charles Bustani, Mr. Mike Stagg, the Democratic nominee. We're going to be asking why he's touring with this film. But before I start that, I'm going to ask him another question. Mr. Stagg, recently you've been endorsed by Esquire magazine, you know, as their endorsement for a candidate for the House of Representatives. And in their article, they had to refer to Mr. Bustani as a lapdog candidate. Representative. So I'm wondering, how do you feel about that endorsement? And could you elaborate a little bit on why, you know, a major magazine would call, you know, a House member a lapdog?
Well, I'm happy to get any endorsement. The fact is that, you know, they made an endorsement in every race. So they obviously paid some attention, even though it was a brief bit of verbiage, they paid some attention to the issues in the district. And the lapdog reference obviously comes from the fact that Mr. Bustani has voted with the House Republican leadership 96% of the time, and the Bush administration 85% of the time. And what that does clearly shows a person who's not independent, a person who is not his own man, and certainly a person who's not representing the interests of a district. Instead, he's representing the interests of the people who fund his campaign, which are the leaders of the Republican House.
Well, let me ask you this. With a representative like that, would you say that that compromises the checks and balance of our Constitution?
Well, I think money as a whole, big money is the start of the entire political process, and I think what's clearly been shown with the scandals we have in Washington right now, range from Jack Abramoff to other people, Duke Cunningham being bribed and other congressmen like that, other congressmen under investigation for exchanging contributions for earmarks. What we clearly see is that money is the start of the political process. And but what we've seen in recent days, and particularly with this matter involving former Congressman Foley and the allegations that he acted as something of a predator on the pages, is that this money also buys silence. Because while Congressman Boustany has been very critical of Congressman Foley, and justifiably so, he has not been critical of the House Republican leadership, which has engaged in a cover-up of Congressman Foley's activity for a number of years. And I think the reason he's been silent about that cover-up is the fact that he gets so much money from Republican House leaders. So here's an example of how money buys not only influence, it buys silence.
Now, that's a wonderful point, and let me ask you, a Louisiana U.S. House of Representative member is there to represent Louisiana and not the monies up there in Washington. So at this point, it would appear that all of us, how does that hurt Louisiana?
Well, I think you go no further back than the first day he was in office. He voted to change the rules of the House that had governed the House for over a century, particularly in reference to the House Ethics Committee. And those rules were passed specifically to protect then Majority Leader Tom DeLay from further ethics embarrassments. And the reason that Congressman Boustany cast that vote was he had received $15,000 from Tom DeLay's PAC. After casting that vote, he received another $10,000. So $25,000 skewed the congressman's interest from those of his district, which after all had no greater interest than the expectation that Congress would operate in a fair and equitable manner, that ethics would be enforced. And instead, he cast that aside and cast his lot with Tom DeLay and other corrupt Republicans whose intent was not to correct unethical behavior, but to conceal it.
Unethical behavior, which leads me into my next question on why we hear a culture of corruption and this movie, Iraq for Sale, War Profiteering. Exactly why are you touring with this movie, and what is this movie about?
Well, when I decided to become a candidate, one of the things I was trying to figure out is how I would talk about the war, because I had strong feelings about it, but I wasn't sure how people in the district felt about the war, and I knew that there are other issues on their minds, and I didn't know how to speak about the war without turning them off to my message, fearing I might turn them off. But as I got out campaigning, what I realized is that the war in Iraq is the first issue people want to talk about. They want to talk about what's going on there, the lives that's being cost, the money that's being cost. Right. And I think that the hidden story, again, going back to this collusion, really, between the Bush administration and the Republican Congress to conceal what's been going on in Iraq, we see that, in fact, there have been companies taking advantage of U.S. taxpayers to the tune of billions of dollars per company and engaging in fraud, and Congress has done nothing to rein that in. And so with us having now been in Iraq longer than we were in Europe in World War II, there has yet to be a single congressional hearing on the conduct of the war, the behavior of these contractors, and what this movie shows is that there is ample cause to have investigations, that we are getting ripped off as taxpayers by these companies, and Congress has been complicit in the deal. And I think that goes back to the fact that these corporations make substantial contributions to campaigns, to political campaigns through PACs, and they spend hundreds of millions of dollars, $200 million a day, according to one recent article, lobbying the Congress to get their way and to buy that silence. And so what my campaign is trying to restore the voice of ordinary people to the political process, to take the big money out of that process. And so it's important that people understand the corrosive influence this money is having not only in the political process, but in our ability to conduct effective foreign policy, in our ability to conduct a war, in our ability to protect the men and women who fight for this country. And it's a disturbing film, and I think what makes it so disturbing is that it's the truth. It jars sharply with the storyline we've been sold by the Bush administration and the Republican leadership.
Mike, that's absolutely disturbing, 100% disturbing, but let me ask you another question that may be a little bit more of concern to our constituents. With this culture of corruption or this influence, is this affecting our troops, our men and women that are deployed on the ground right now?
Absolutely. I mean, there's stories about, you'll see in the film that there are long lines for mess hall. That is because the companies don't want to run a 24/7 kitchen because it's not cost effective for them. There's polluted water that people are bathing in on a daily basis. There's been bad food served. I mean, contaminated food. I mean, it's just a complete disregard. Profits are the motive of these companies, and this is the first time that the private sector has been so actively involved in the pursuit of a war, and our national, been so intimately involved with the progress of a war. And so I think it raises some disturbing questions, and particularly where is their allegiance? Their allegiance isn't to the troops, it isn't to the country, it's to the dollar. And that's the problem. These are jobs that have never been outsourced before. They were always jobs carried out by the military themselves. Men and women who had a duty to their country, a duty to their fellow troops. And instead now what we have are these companies who have duty to no one but themselves and their shareholders.
So I want to make this perfectly clear, is that you're not second-guessing the war. You're saying Iraq for sale is factual evidence that our Congress is not doing its job as far as protecting our troops, running this war, and just rolling over to big money.
Well, I agree with your second point, but I fundamentally question the war, too. I just think the war was sold to us as a bill of goods with skewed intelligence that was deliberately skewed, and the administration played a significant part in that, particularly Vice President Cheney. And I think that these are, when you look at the fact that he holds a lot of Halliburton stock and trust, and he's personally profited from the pursuit of this war through the contracts that Halliburton has gotten from the federal government, certainly on a no-bid contract basis, it raises serious ethical and legal questions, constitutional questions, and I think that these all have to be looked at. And the only way they would get examined is if we have a Democratic Congress.
Okay, Mike, let me ask you this question. There's a lot of pundits out there who says that if you do not support the president, or if you do not support the war, you do not support this country. You're unpatriotic. You support the terrorists. How accurate is that statement?
Well,
how dangerous is that?
Well, it's a complete mischaracterization of what America is about. Our country is based on the right of people to criticize the president. In fact, Theodore Roosevelt had a great quote about the fact that anybody who suggests that it's un-American to criticize the president is in fact themselves un-American. We have a right in our country to exercise free speech. Particularly, it's necessary if your country is engaged in erroneous policies, and we clearly are engaged in a war that was not based on factual evidence. We were suckered into it by our own leaders, and we were paying a tremendous price for it with no willingness to admit errors. And I resent that implication. I mean, I'm a patriot. Just because I disagree with the president's policies does not make me any less of a patriot. In fact, if the only reason people will support the president is because they're afraid of criticizing him, then they, in fact, don't recognize their duties as a citizen. And it is the fundamental right of every citizen to express their views. It is, in fact, their duty, I believe, to express their views, particularly when they disagree, because the only way you can take corrective action is if you admit there's an error. And feedback in any business system, any scientific system, any network system, feedback is essential for the proper have a healthily functioning system. And what those people who criticize people who dissent from the current policy fail to understand is that in the closed loop that they want to exist in the little bubble they want the world to exist in, that without that feedback, they veer wildly off course, and that's exactly how we got into the mess we're in Iraq right now.
Right, wonderful point, and I love the point that you are supporting the Constitution of the United States. Now, to my understanding, when you get sworn in to the Congress of the United States, the oath of office goes that you promise to protect and defend the Constitution of the United States, and one of those constitutional rights is our Bill of Rights, which is the freedom of expression.
Right.
So what you're basically saying is that not only will you do that, but you'll exercise that checks and balance that Constitution calls for.
Well, I believe in the entire Bill of Rights, and I don't believe you can cherry pick and choose which ones you want to see it enforced like the current administration does, like they're not too wild about the Fourth Amendment and the First Amendment. So, I think the entire Bill of Rights, that is what makes this country great, and the protection of those rights and the citizens also meeting their duties and obligations are what make us a great country. And so we have to have free expression of ideas. Anything that chills that undermines what this country is about, undermines our greatness, and diminishes us as a people.
Right, which brings us to my final question, is as a member of Congress, what are some of your platform? What will you start when you get up there? What is your platform?
Well, the first thing is to restore Congress's constitutional authority to provide oversight of the action of the executive branch. That's something, again, that's been laid aside for about 6 years by the current Republican Congress and this administration. Second thing is we need to understand that nation building begins at home, and that the first obligation of American government is to provide for the American citizens. And so that would include raising the minimum wage, a minimum of $2 an hour. I believe that no American who works for a living should live in poverty. Second, I believe we should also join the rest of the industrialized world and provide a single-payer health plan in the United States so that every American has access to health care, regardless of their social status, regardless of their employment status, regardless of their station in life. And these, I think, would go a long way towards restoring a sense of community, a sense of common value in our communities, in our country, rather than this sort of divisive politics that we've been engaged in so vociferously in the past 6 years. And the other part of the platform that goes back to Iraq is energy independence. I mean, we are in the Middle East because of our dependence on foreign oil. And we can break that dependence, but only if we commit aggressively to break that dependence, just like we did in the 1960s when John Kennedy said we would put a man on the moon by the end of the decade. We should make our national goal should be to break ourselves of all foreign energy dependence within a decade, and if we do it, if we provide the incentives, if we make it a true national priority, like Kennedy did in the 60s with the space program, we can have the same kind of success. It would be great for our economy because we know how to grow biofuels here in Louisiana, sugarcane, rice, forest products. We know how to refine. We know how to do all the things that are needed to create alternative energy. The other thing is, it would be good for the economy here. It would be good for the environment because it would help break our dependency on a carbon-based economy. It would be great for our foreign policy because then we could be free to act only in those places where it's truly in our national interest, and not when we fear that some despot might put his foot on the oil spigot.
Right. Well, a brighter future for America with a Democrat. And Mike, I'll give you the last one more chance to tell the viewers out there in Acadiana why they should go to the polls November 7th and vote for you.
Well, we live in perilous times in our country. We're at war. We have been under attack by terrorists. But we have not fundamentally dealt with the issues at hand. We have not pursued Osama bin Laden. We have not finished the business in Afghanistan. And we risk now having a failed foreign policy that has ruined our standing in the world, changed the perception of America in the world, and we are now viewed as one of the bad guys in the world, which is a complete turnaround from the opportunity we had in September of 2001 after we were attacked. And I think that if we're going to reclaim our standing in the world, it's going to take a change in policy. It's going to take a Congress willing to exercise its authority to rein in the executive and restore the constitutional balance upon which our system and our greatness was built.
Thank you, Mike. And what's your number again on that's Mike Stagg, number
33 on November 7th.
Okay, number 33. Once again, folks, I'm Richard Warren with the Democrats. I've been here interviewing Mr. Mike Stagg. We're touring with Iraq for Sale, war profiteering movie. Please check the website Iraq for Sale so that you could see where I'll be showing at next. And thank you for joining us.